Hello, my name is Bill Girten of Brain Children. I want to welcome you to this webinar, today's webinar titled Create a Mobile App in 60 Minutes. It is my hope that after completing this webinar, within the next hour, you will be able to quickly and successfully pull together the key ingredients needed in order to successfully create a mobile app. So let's begin. Why am I here? I am here because I am building a business. I live in the northeastern quarter of the wonderful state of Maryland, and I'm looking at the situation where there is a great need throughout the United States here for mobile app talent, and since it's an exciting and emerging industry, I'm looking to help harness that energy with individuals out there that would like to get involved with a career in mobile apps technology, or perhaps maybe a hobby. But the main reason I'm here, let's face it, is to build a business, and I like to build a business with people that would like to be successful developing mobile application technology. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to connect that American talent with great opportunities that are out there, not necessarily limited to here physically in the United States. Of course, one of the cool things about information technology, since it's totally electric and it's electronic and it spans the globe, you could be doing projects that are in another country away or another continent away. Also, I'm very excited about the type of mobility computing that's being offered up as an emerging technology, as being the next, I would consider the next chapter in information technologies. We've gone from mainframe computers, we've gone from mainframe to client-server technology, now from client-server technology onto web, and then web 2.x, and now here we are with mobile apps because of great smart devices that allow us to put the power of a computer in our hands, either in a tablet form or through a smartphone. But anyway, I'm very excited about that, and I'd like to if I could, work with other individuals that are interested in pursuing that type of emerging technology and opportunity that is out there for individuals. You are probably here because you are most likely either starting a hobby, maybe stamp collecting wasn't for you, or collecting bottle caps. Nonetheless, this is an opportunity to start a hobby or begin a hobby or change a hobby with very little to no cost. And what's really even more exciting about it is that you could be up and running and developing a mobile app very quickly here, and it doesn't take 4 years of schooling, 4 years of college education or high school in order to do that. The other thing you might be, the other reason you might be here is you might be starting a new career. Maybe either a new career, you're fresh out of college, and because of the way the economy here is in 2012, maybe you don't have an opportunity to pursue what you've learned as far as a professional, what you learn in school and in college. So here's an opportunity here where something you might find interesting, and it would really challenge you and challenge you in ways that you weren't even aware that even existed. This might be the very thing that you're looking for that could really ignite a spark into a full-blown inferno. Also, you might be involved with a career, it might be coming from another line of work, and you said, you know what, I bet you I could write an app that would do something like that if I only had the skill or the know-how to do it. Well, I'm here to help you get on the right foot. The other thing you might be doing besides changing your career, you might be taking a look at, I've often thought if we could have some sort of an app that would do such and such, people would be to pass to my door, or they might think I'm cool or whatever. So this is something that will help you in that endeavor within the next 60 minutes. If you don't know how to develop a mobile app, I will show you at least what you need to get started. So here's what you're going to learn. I'm going to teach you 3 main areas what we're going to be doing here in order to develop a mobile app. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to use HTML5 to more or less put together the framework of what you're going to be building. Think of a house. When you go and have a house built, it's not like they put in rooms section by section and they bolt it together. It's usually a foundations poured, then typically a frame goes up, frame made of usually wood studs, or it might be metal framing, and nonetheless you need some sort of a frame in order to define what the particular app is going to look like. We're going to use JavaScript to control the app. The JavaScript is a type of a scripting language where you can react to certain events, whether it's a swipe or a gesture, it might be a tap or a click. JavaScript is that particular layer that you need in order to control that mobile application. Finally, I'm going to show you cascading style sheets, and what they're going to do is decorate your app. Instead of just a plain, bland, white background, black lettering, we're going to use cascading style sheets in order to make it more eye-appealing, to make it look like it has some pizzazz, some sizzle. One of the things that you're probably aware of is that the mobile apps growth is something that's pretty phenomenal. Even if you're not involved with the information technologies industry, still you have to look back where we were 5 years ago regarding smartphones. 5 years ago, the iPhone didn't even exist. So here we are today looking at incredible opportunities that not only work on the iPhones but also smart tablets as well. Now, tablets had been around for quite a while, but it was for some strange reason Apple was able to give it that certain thing that made it the it factor, gave it the it factor, what it needed in order to make the iPad a success. One of the things that people are doing right now is they're looking at what can I move over from an old-fashioned PC or a desktop computer to become more mobile, because maybe my line of work needs a tablet that can be on the go. So what's happening right now is, if you take a look at this chart that I have here, Nielsen has put together, based on their surveys, some data here showing that the amount of time that has been spent on the top 50 apps, back last year, 74% of the time was spent on developing mobile apps. Now it's been cut down to 58. We have more powerful tools out there that will help you to develop an idea that you have to be put onto a mobile application device, whether it's a tablet or a smartphone. Pardon me, these devices are more powerful, and these program application development tools will also help in a more powerful fashion, so you're able to do more in less time. Taking a look at the amount of time that's spent on apps versus web, you can see the large chunk underneath of that. 73% in 2011 was spent on developing apps. Even if you take a look at 2011, that meant that 27% of that was spent on developing apps for the World Wide Web. So as you can see, it's in the minority now. It used to be, back at the turn of the 21st century, back when we had that dot-com revolution, majority of the apps that were being built back then were supposed to be web ready. Now, as you can see, less and less emphasis is being put on the web, more into the mobile device. Excuse me. If we move over to right next to it, the 81%, you can see that the shrinking web application market gives you pause to think, should I be developing for the web or should I be developing for smart devices? And the evidence is clearly in, based on the survey, the information that the Nielsen organization has taken in. Over to the right there, we take a look at smartphone penetration. Now, I know I'm sort of jumping the gun here because it's not on this chart here, but even last week, I guess this was the iPad 4th generation and the iPad mini were introduced, and at that point Apple CEO Tim Cook had mentioned that over 100 million iPads were sold in just 1 year alone worldwide. So that gives you an idea of the penetration that these smart devices are making across the planet. So if we take a look again at smartphone penetration, you can see that 38% of it was in 2011. Now we have just a hair over half of them. Smartphone is out there now for the population willing to buy. If you take a look underneath that, the Android and the iOS users, there were 38 million in 2011, and there's more than twice that in 2012. If you take a look at the bottom right-hand corner, you can see the percentage of app downloaders with Android and iOS phones. 74% apps that were downloaded with in 2011 with Android and iOS, and now it's 88%. So there's more of a hunger. There's more of a hunger out there of people looking for smart content, smart apps on smart devices. The target platforms that are predominantly out there right now are in three. There are two main categories, and then there's the third one that's coming up stronger as time goes on. If you look at the top there, you'll see that you have the iOS, which is everything Apple. Their particular platform will allow you to develop for their devices, whether you're developing a native Objective-C or an HTML5. Through their WebKit process, you're able to render your smart app on those devices. Under the Android column, which is just about everything under Google Marketplace, or I think they call it Google Play now, you have HTML5 and you have native as well. The native language in Android is different than that of iOS. In iOS, it is Objective-C, which is it's a C programming language that has object orientation in it. Under Android, it would be Java. Java has been predominantly a strong, flexible language that's been in existence now for over 15 years and almost 20 years. And the thing that's exciting about Java is that Java can work on a desktop platform, a web platform, and it can also work on the Android devices as their native language. So it's pretty flexible. We're not going to be using the native languages today. We're going to be using HTML5. As you can see, it also is under the Windows category. Handhelds and smartphones, you have to have a special version of the .NET Visual Studio in order to compile applications and to distribute them under the Windows platform. Now, the tablets, at the time of this webinar, the tablets that are out under Windows in the past have been compatible with older versions of Windows, more of a desktop release of Windows, but now Microsoft has gone to a new thing called Windows RT, Windows 8. It's more touch-driven than the traditional versions of the older traditional versions of the Windows operating system. However, it's not at all clear how difficult or how easy it is to write for the tablets. Right now, for the smartphones, there was rumor going around that the HTML5, although it will render, it's not as friendly as the iOS and the Android camp as far as browsers rendering HTML5, because traditionally IE, Internet Explorer, their web browser, has not been HTML5 compliant. So it's anybody's guess as to what's going to happen regarding the tablets, how easy or how difficult to develop on that platform will be. For the purposes of today's webinar, I'm not going to be developing anything to target the Windows platform. Everything that you're going to be able to take away today will be compliant with under iOS, Android, and just about any device that will be able to render HTML5 and JavaScript and cascading style sheets. So let's look at the native approach before we get into the HTML5. Under the native approach, you have, under iOS, like I said before, you have Objective-C. Objective-C is a C-like programming language. It's a little more user-friendly to read, but for those unfamiliar with Objective-C, if you look at the white box that I have here in this slide, you can see it looks a little bit cryptic. You have, for this particular class, it's called an implementation. It has to have an associated header file, which is a separate file. You go through this cryptic programming language, and then what you have to do is you have to run through what they call a compilation, where you compile this human-readable code into machine code, and then you, after you're done building it, compiling it, you're done building it, then it gets deployed to the iOS device, and then you run it. Now, in order to put it onto the device, you have to have certain requirements, such as you have to be an Apple developer, be part of their Apple developer program. That'll run you $99 a year. And then once you get in there, you have to go through a process where you have to get certificates. Certificates have to be acquired through the developers program in order for the certificates to be valid, and to be using those valid certificates in order to get over to the device itself. It might seem a little cryptic. There are some tutorials on that. It's really not too bad for people who aren't too familiar with it. It might seem a little scary at first, but you get used to it. But nonetheless, though, there's a little bit of a curve that's involved before you can move forward in developing something on iOS and getting it to the device itself in order to test it. Yes, there is a simulator that's involved with developing an iOS and Objective-C. You can run it in the simulators. There's one that simulates the iPad, and one that simulates the iPhone and the iTouch, and you can choose whether it's the operating system is iOS 4 or 5 or 6, if it's got Retina display. But again, you're tied to, at the very least, if you want to get it onto the device itself, you have to be part of the developer program. The next native approach we look at is the Android approach. As I said before, it's use Java in order to develop on that platform. Java in and of itself is a little more user-friendly to read, or I would say easier to comprehend than it is Objective-C. With Objective-C, you have to worry about things like what they call the memory heap. You have to worry about things called memory pointers. Typically, you don't have to do that in Java, although it's not like you have unlimited amounts of memory and such. You have to be concerned with that as well with the Android devices. But for those of you who might be coming from a career in IT where you've used Java in the past, this might be an easy fit for you to move over to the Android platform to get involved with mobile apps technology. So we see right here, here's just a simple Java method called execute. It returns an object called plugin result. You go through here and execute this code, and when it's finished, it returns the plugin result. Just like I showed you in the previous slide with the Apple iOS Objective-C native approach, you have to go through a compilation process. You have to build it, and you can run it on through a simulator, which I have pictured here, or you would be able to take that through the editor, typically the most popular editor for Java, which is called Eclipse. They have this thing called a plugin, and through the Eclipse plugin, you're able to build and you're able to deploy the binary needed in order to run on an Android device. Now, you can use the simulator, very simple to use. Again, it's part of the plugins that go with Eclipse. But if you want to get to the device, unlike Apple where you need a certificate, you just have to be able to put the device in what they call debug mode and then set it up through Eclipse that when you're done building it, when you're going to run it, it will take care of electronically putting it onto that Android device so you can test it, typically done through a USB connection. And so those are the two native approaches in order to develop a mobile app for those devices. What I want to show today is the framework approach. The framework approach will use HTML5, so you won't have to go through the certification process like with Apple and iOS. You won't have to go through compiling and working out syntax errors with the actual native language. What we'll do is we'll use HTML5, the JavaScript, which will respond to the events like I had described a little bit earlier, such as gesture and touch and swipe. And then you'll have cascading style sheets, which is CSS, that will help decorate it and make your application look wonderful, make it look dazzling. On top of those three blocks, the foundation here, you could use the Xcode, or you could use the Android Software Developers Toolkit. The Xcode will allow you to easily build and edit and build. Now let me back up here. What I mean by build is just taking a file that's full of information to describe your app, the HTML5, the JavaScript, the CSS. And you can use Xcode in order to pull all of those three components together and save your app into those files. You can also use Eclipse, which is built upon, the Android Software Developers Toolkit, which is built upon Eclipse, and the Android Software Developers Toolkit will give you such things as the simulator, and it will also allow you to deploy your app, build and deploy your app to that device without using the certification process like you would get with iOS. The thing about the Xcode is that with the Xcode, I think it's free to download. It might be maybe a couple of dollars through the App Store. But once you download it, you get cool tools with that. And one of the things that you can get with that is the actual iOS simulator, so you can simulate going through either an iPhone or through an iPad, which will give you a pretty good idea of what your app's going to look like when you run them on those devices. At the very top, you can see that's your mobile app powerhouse. So the three key ingredients at the bottom, which is your foundation, HTML5, the JavaScript jQuery, and the CSS. You can use either of those two editing types of approaches, whether it's Xcode if you want to develop for iOS, or if you want to use Eclipse in the Android Software Developers Toolkit. Either way, you will be able to build on the foundation and create a mobile app powerhouse. At the end of this presentation, I'll be providing all the information needed in order to acquire this, these ingredients. The HTML5, the JavaScript, and we're going to be using jQuery today, and CSS, they're available free of charge. It's a free download. The Xcode, like I said, it's either free or a couple of dollars through the App Store. The Android Software Developers Toolkit and Eclipse for developing Android apps is free of charge. So as you can see, it doesn't really cost really any money at all in order to get started in this, and that's what makes this exciting, is that we're doing some new emerging technologies with little to no cost. Now, let me also further expand here what that framework approach looks like more or less behind the scenes. You have HTML5, hypertext markup language, JavaScript, and cascading style sheets. As you can see with the red tags there, the div, the div, the A's, each one of those things are called tags, HTML tags. So inside of each one of those tags, you'll see little keywords there like style, they'll be in green, style, href, ID, data role. Each one of those little things is called attributes, and they're part of the whole HTML5 markup language. And what you can do is, like I said, at the end of this presentation, I'll be providing information in order to learn more about it. But what happens is inside of what you can see here, less than signs and greater than signs, each one of those is called a tag. And inside of the tag with their attributes, they describe how your application is to be framed, what the structure is going to look like. So as you can see, I have three main sections here inside of that black rectangle. I have a div and I have an A. A div is a division, A is an anchor tag. Okay, an anchor tag is nothing more than a hyperlink. Typically in the past when you've clicked on hyperlinks, they've usually been underlined and they've had a blue color to them. Same thing, that's what an anchor tag is. And that href that's in there means that you're going to more or less go someplace when somebody taps or clicks on something. So I have three sections here. I have a maintain list, a shop live, and a compare. And if you look over to the right, which is that iOS simulator, or the iPhone simulator, you'll see that there are what looks like three buttons: maintain list, shop live, and compare. So the HTML5 gives you the structure, the definition of what those hyperlinks look like. And the hyperlinks in this case, they look like buttons. The reason they look like buttons is because we used CSS to make them look like buttons. Okay, now what's also going on here is a little bit of JavaScript and jQuery is getting involved. As you can see, underneath or inside of the anchor tag, which is the A space href, the second line down, you'll see all the way to the right hand side, you'll see data hyphen role equals button. What's going on here is jQuery's got CSS behind the scenes, and just by simply saying data-role equals button, it will decorate your hyperlink to make it look like it's a button. It's pretty cool, huh? So you don't have to sit there and figure out Oh man, do I have to have special coding in order to make it look like a button? The short answer is no. And when I go through the demo here, you'll see how that is accomplished. Finally, the jQuery, which I touched a little bit on here, is what's reacting to what the human being is doing here, what the user is doing. So in this case, if the user sees this on their iPhone and they tap either maintain lists or the shop lab or the compare, an event occurred. In this case, it might be a tap event or it might be a click event. In this case, we're just going to make it simple and call it a click event. And when we click on that event, it's like clicking on a hyperlink. We're going to go somewhere. And in this demo here, I will show you how by clicking a button, we'll go from one page to another page and then come back. So all you have to do is just simply put keywords in here like I have in the black rectangle there. All you have to do is put keywords in there of the HTML5, the JavaScript, the CSS, and you save it and you're ready to run. There's no compilation, no syntax errors, no certificates. It's practically free of charge. You also have the added flexibility of the framework that you can use, and it's not going to be covered in this webinar here, but you can actually build a native mobile app, and the native mobile app will actually get compiled into a binary that gets distributed through either Apple's App Store, or it could be distributed through Google Play for the Android market. Or if you're a BlackBerry fan, I know BlackBerry World is still out there, and Microsoft Store has got their apps as well. But what's cool about this framework flexibility is you can either build for the native mobile app, you could develop it for the mobile web app, which looks very similar if you look closely at it, and then finally you have the web app itself for those particular reasons that you might have, that you would have a website and a mobile version. You only have to code this up one time and it reaches both places. So it's pretty easy to do, it's pretty easy to maintain, and if you change it one place, it'll change the other place pretty easily without a whole lot of coding. So let's begin. Let's see what we can do here. Like I said, using the HTML5, the JavaScript, and the CSS. I'm going to switch screens here, and I'm going to go over here, and I have a project ready to go. It's called My Seasons. I'm going to show you 4 different seasons throughout the year. Took some pictures, wrote up a little blurb on each season here, and what I like to do is, as I show all 4 seasons, click on a given season and expound a little bit on that picture and what's so special about that season. Just as a vehicle to give you an idea of what a mobile app would look like when you code it up. So let me give you an idea of what a project would typically look like. I'm using, as you can see up here from the top, I'm using Eclipse, which is a very popular editor. It's out there on the World Wide Web. At the end of the webinar, I'll provide links on how to get there, and it's downloaded free of charge. On top of that, you can probably see I have little Android symbols here, here, and here. That's because what I did do is I downloaded the Android Software Developers Toolkit. That's available out there on the World Wide Web as well, free of charge. And so what I did here is in Eclipse, I created this project, and I called the project My Seasons. Inside of My Seasons, I have my areas that I talked about, the HTML5, the CSS, and the JavaScript. So as you can see right here on the index.html, I have my HTML5, which is located right here, which is inside of My Seasons project. And I have 2 other areas. I have my cascading style sheets here, and I also have my JavaScript here, in case I need that. And I also have another area here too called images. So I kept images here. I typically throw them in a folder called IMG. But whenever I start a project, a mobile web app project, I will typically break it down into an area called web content, and I'll have a CSS and images if I need them, a JS for the JavaScript, and then of course the HTML5 that I will use for building the structure of the app. So let me maximize this. Oh, incidentally, just so you know, everything I'm showing you is going to be downloadable as a as a demo. You'll be able to download all the files that I've developed here in order for you to run the app, hack it, and use it any way you see fit. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the HTML, and this is broken down into a couple areas. Like I said before, we have these things called tags, and inside of the tags, what I do is they're there for particular purposes. They help define structure for the application. Inside of the HTML, you have two main areas. You have a head and you have a body. So as you can see, there's a little bit of symmetry here. For every tag, I have to have a closing slash here, or in some cases, you'll see some HTML tags where you will have something like this, where there's no corresponding link at the end here. This is letting the browser know that the link tag has been closed and there's no other information to follow that link. So up here in the head, we typically have the title. We have some information regarding the style sheets. We have to tell the HTML5 where the style sheets are, and we also have to tell where the JavaScript is as well. Down here in the body is where we typically develop the visual side of the application. That's where we're showing the actual structure. So let's begin here at the head. So what I'll do here is I'll put a title up here called My Seasons. And what I'll do is I will tell the index.html where the style sheets are. Like I said before, we have them here under CSS. So in this case, under CSS, I have one here called jQuery Mobile -1.1.0. What I'm going to do is I'm going to more or less take a shortcut here, and I'm going to copy this by trying to rename it, and I'm going to copy this here, and what I'm going to do is paste it in under this href here and paste it in there. So what it looks like is I'm saying the style sheet is located in the CSS folder right here, and it's called jQuery Mobile -1.1.0.css. We do the same thing over here at the JavaScript level as well. And underneath JavaScript, you'll see that I have index, jQuery 171 min, and jQuery Mobile. Let me explain a few things as I go through this. Underneath this, you can see up here it was an href tag. For JavaScript, it's called the src tag, or the source tag. So I'm going to put JS here, and what I'm going to do is put an index.js, and what I'm going to do is take a look over here, and this is very important. When you're going to use this jQuery Mobile, you'll read about this as I provide the resources. If you're ever going to use jQuery Mobile is built on top of jQuery 1.7.1. So that means that you must load the jQuery 1.7.1 first. So what will happen here is if you try to load this guy first, it will have references in there, and it will have no idea what you're talking about, and it could provide you with unpredictable results. So you don't want to do that. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go to jQuery, and we're going to go -1.7.1.min for minimized.js. And then what we're going to do down here is bring in jQuery Mobile by looking inside of the JS folder, and that is jQuery.mobile, like we have over here in this highlighted area. And then this is -1.0.1.js. Okay, that said, let's go over here, and at this point let's take a look and over here and see what we find in our simulator. I have a simulator here that is pointing to index.html, which is what I have here, And what I'm going to do is I'm going to refresh that. And as you can see, already there's some changes here. For instance, if I go up here, you can see that my seasons is already at the top here as a title. And then on top of that, you can see up here there's looks like a header area. It looks like there's a footer area. So let's go down here now that we have the head taken care of. And let's go down here to the body. And this is something that I typically will stub out at the beginning of every project. I have a template that I save on the side here, and when I use jQuery Mobile, it's broken down into 3 main areas. For each area that or for each page that I'm going to be developing, I have in here called a div, a division tag, and I have here data role equals page. And I also have the, I can put in an ID, and unique ID in here, okay? And inside of each one of those pages, I typically have a header. I have a content, which is the guts of it, which is the center right here. And then what I do is I have a footer as well. So let's say, for instance, up here in the header, I want to put my seasons. I seem to have a problem spelling seasons. So if I put my seasons in here with this H1, this header tag, and again, I encourage you to read up on HTML5 what these tags mean, but they're very simple to use. You don't have to compile and build them, so it's not very hard for you to try something out, save it, and then take a look at it either in a web browser or take a look at it on an iOS device or an Android device. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to refresh this, and as you can see, my seasons here is at the top of the header. Okay. So down here in the footer, I can do the same thing. I can take, let me expand this here. I can take the footer here, and I can put in here, let's say, let's use something typically generic. Let's say maybe a copyright looks good. So we'll do a copyright. We'll do 2012. Then what we'll do is we'll use let's use a bullet point. And we'll put some guy named Chris Thomas, or some gal named Chris Thomas. Anyway, I save it here, and when I go back here and refresh this, I can see down here at the bottom I have copyright 2012 Chris Thomas. So already at the top and at the bottom here, it looks very app-like. What I'm going to do here is take care of the middle. The middle is going to allow me to, I'm going to put in 4 sections. Each one of those sections is going to have a different season of the year. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one season, I'm going to just more or less copy and paste it in here. Let's start off with, why don't we start off with spring, since winter will be here before we know it. And we'll be wishing for spring soon enough. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy this chunk of code. I'm going to put it over here underneath the content section, which is like our midsection here. And let me just paste it in there, pretty it up a little bit, so it's very easy to read. Whoops. Let me see here. Let's try this again. Okay, so we put this in here. Go back. Okay. And like I said before, it's very symmetrical. So you'll need to, if you have a UL here, you're going to have a closing UL tag down here. UL stands for unordered list, and each one of these guys are list items. Okay. So as you can see right here, I have a list underneath the content. I have an unordered list, and it's going to be called list view. That's the data role that it's in, and we call the class here main menu. I won't get into class. You can more or less read more about classes. They're inside of cascading style sheets. What you can do is define the look and feel of something one time and use it all over the place just by inserting the word class without having to have a whole bunch of gobbledygook, which is the cascading style sheet scripting, the directives, and the selectors. Classes will help simplify that as you develop your mobile app. So what I do here is for each one of these line items, we're going to have a different season of the year. So in this case, we have spring. What's going to happen here is when we put this section here, we're going to have the anchor tag, which is a hyperlink, and we're going to have a spring. is the name of the hash that we're going to be clicking off to. And what that means is we're going to be looking, when they click on Spring, we're going to be looking for another section, and it's going to be a page, and it's going to have an ID up here of Spring. So we don't ever leave this index.html. All we do is define div sections in here that have data role equals page, and we just give it different IDs. Inside of this, the jQuery will know where to direct your page. In this case, what we told it to do was when it moves to that page, we want it to slide, just like a typical mobile app would slide. Down here, I have what's called a style tag. That's part of the CSS. So inside of Spring, we're going to have a couple of things. We're going to push over to the left-hand side. We're going to have a picture of Spring, which is in a thumbnail form. We're going to put 20 pixels of space around the picture. We're going to have a heading named Spring underneath of it. And then what we're going to do is put a label down there saying, in this case, here's a breathtaking shot of Williamsburg. Okay? So if I save it here, and I go back here and refresh our mobile web app, we can see that we have Spring here at the very top. Just like I said, there's the thumbnail, there's Spring, here's a breathtaking shot of Williamsburg. It's all very well and good, and it didn't take very much code in order to do that. It just took several lines right here. As you can see, we had a closing UL tag down here, closing LI tag for the line list item down here, and then we had the anchor tag, and inside of that we had a paragraph. Okay? So now what we want to do is we want to be able to duplicate this again, and we want to be able to do this for we also want to be able to take it from the unordered list, and inside of that we have that list item, and that list item here is going to be for Spring, and we might as well have one for summer, fall, and winter. So let's go over here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the other list items here. So let's get summer and fall and winter. Okay, we're going to copy them over. We're going to paste them inside here just before the closing unordered list tag. And if everything goes right, it should show us all 4 seasons of the year. I decided to pick on areas that are near and dear to our heart here in the Northeast. And so what I'm going to do is save it. I'm going to go back and I'm going to run this again. And sure enough, I get all 4 seasons of the year. So see, right here in less than a few minutes, in less than 10 minutes, I was able to put together an unordered list of 4 list items, and inside of that I basically have almost looks like a mashup, what they call a mashup. If you take you about YouTube, I'm sure you have, you take a look at all of those particular videos that you could click on, and each one of them has a thumbnail with a description. Same concept here. So what's going to happen now is inside of each one of these list items we have a hyperlink that will jump somewhere. Okay, so in this case let's pick on Spring again, since it was the very first one, and if I go down here to the bottom, I'm going to have to create a new page, and that page is going to have Spring on it. Okay, so to spare us both of me being embarrassed by not being able to properly type in code, I'm going to take Spring right here, and I'm going to be able to take this and copy it, and I'm going to go to the bottom of this page right here, and before my body tag, I'll open up a couple lines of code there, and I'll paste Spring. So when we go over here and we take a look, when the user clicks on this hyperlink ref, what will happen is it should slide over to this new page here, which is called Spring. Okay, we're going to add a back button on here. Now, you'll see this data add back BTN. That is one of the real convenient things we can use from jQuery, which is trapping for a button being clicked that has back on it. And if I were to code this by hand, I'd have to make sure that it works on an iOS device, on an Android device, on every browser imaginable. The good folks from jQuery took care of that for us. jQuery Mobile, excuse me, took care of that for us, so I don't have to code, maybe a couple hundred lines of code to make sure it's cross-browser compatible, cross-device compatible as well. So let's go ahead and give it a shot. I'm going to save it here. We're going to go back, and I'm going to refresh this, and let's see what happens when we click Spring. Sure enough, it goes right there to Spring. And now what we can see is we go back here. This was the thumbnail version of the picture, and we go to this page. It's more, it's a bigger picture, and we've got more text here. That's because down here, inside of this content section, we have the image, and we also have the label. Well, the actual text inside label tags. But what's neat about this is just a couple of lines of code, and we were able to click here and smoothly go over here. So think about what you could do right now. You could take this particular app, which is available at the end of this presentation, and you could hack it, and you could basically take pictures that were maybe that you clicked off down the shore or on your last vacation off the mountains and share them with your family. You could even have your personal web page, make them go smoothly, transition like it is an app, or you can do what I do, which is have a particular page out there, and then you just reference that page, and it makes it look like you have an app. Okay. So, and by the way, I'm not alone in this. There are plenty of mobile web apps out there that are using the leverage of the internet. And Home Depot is a good example. They don't have a native app. They use an HTML5 app that they distributed over the World Wide Web. More and more businesses are using that because they don't want to have to go through the hassle of maybe taking an app through the approval process, the submission approval process through Google and through Apple. This frees you up from having to do that. Plus, if you're being paid for your app, you usually have to give them a 30% cut. So anyway, let's go back here now. Since we've seen that we've had this new page Spring and the content here, we also see that we've also put the footer in here as well. As we can see, there's a style tag in here. There's more of that CSS. If I wanted to change this 10 pixels here to like make it bigger, let's say for instance I wanted to make it, I don't know, let's say 16 pixels high. Now what I can do is I can go back here. I can refresh the app, and it won't change down on this page, but on the next page it will change, as you can see right here. That is what is making our app have a different look and feel. It's the CSS that does that. So the HTML5 defined this app as being structure for the header and the footer and the content here. The JavaScript of the jQuery reacts to these button clicks, these hyperlink clicks, and it's the CSS3 that has decorated. I'm going to change this back to what it was before, which was 10. To make sure, let's go back, refresh this app, and go back and take a look, and voila, as you can see, it's back to 10 pixels in height, font size. Okay, so let's do this. Let's take, since we have spring here, let's bring the other seasons of the year in, and they have the same look and feel. So you have page here. The next one will be summer, then followed by fall, and then be followed by winter. So let's go down here, and I'm going to grab summer here, and I'm going to grab fall, and I'm also going to grab winter. Okay, and I'm going to paste this over here, and so let's see, we've got winter, and we've got our body tag there, like we showed at the end, fall, before that summer, and before that spring. So I save this, I go back here, and whoops, let's go back here like this, and refresh this. Okay, now we're back to where we were before. So there's spring. Let's take a look at summer. So this is a thumbnail of Bethany Beach, Delaware. So we click on summer, we should see Bethany Beach, and we do. We see a larger picture of that and describing what was so special about that particular day at that particular picture, that shot, talking about the wet, salty air and so forth before we go back to school. And let's take a look at Pennsylvania foliage here. This is fall. This is a very pretty farm, some farmland there. Definitely can smell that pumpkin pie baking. And finally here, winter. Unique shot of Baltimore when we've got some ice on the harbor. And so this is another example, again, of going through, clicking on various links, and the jQuery will let you go there, and the CSS will help decorate it. The HTML5, of course, giving it structure, including your header and your footer. And for those that are able to host a website, here's an example of this particular app that's out there under my company's site, Brain Children, and it's under brainchildrennet/demo/index.html. So you can create an app pretty easily and have it hosted, and you're up and running. No submission to the App Store waiting for approval for it to be put out there. You can be up and running very quickly with little to no cost. All right, so let's go back and finish up here. So let's review. The HTML5 helps define the particular structure of your app. And in this case, we use the HTML5 to define the 4 seasons of the year, show them in an unordered list, each one of those particular seasons being a list item. We use the JavaScript controls in order to determine whether or not somebody clicked something, somebody tapped something. In this case, we use the JavaScript to also tap on the back button in order to go from one page back to the previous page. The CSS was used. I gave you an example of that in the demo, where the pixel at the footer, I took it from 10 pixel font size to a 16 pixel font size, and as you saw, the copyright, the bullet, and Chris Thomas's name was enlarged because the font size went from 10 pixels to 16 pixels. So the CSS helps decorate. We were able to see the footer and the header there. They were in blue. CSS can change that to any color you want. It could be a gradient color. You could change the font, not only the font size, the actual font family itself. You could use the JavaScript, besides making them those hyperlinks being buttons. You could use the JavaScript to also trap for gestures such as pinch and so forth. So all in all, these 3 key ingredients as the foundation are little to no cost, easily had out there through the World Wide Web in the references section I'm going to be providing at the end of the webinar. But all 3 ingredients help you to define a mobile app. If you want to go to the next level, you'll still use these in order to develop a native app that will be sold through Google Play or through Apple's App Store. So, for more information on this, it's available through http://www.brainchildren.net. I have it in a page called createiN60.html. In there, you can download the entire demo. In that demo, you can more or less play with it as you see fit, add your own code, or maybe use it as a starter kit and build upon that, maybe embellish it, enhance it. There will be references in there that will take you out to sites if you want to do more research in knowing more about cascading style sheets, because there's a tremendous need for mobile apps people out there. If you want to get involved with graphics designing, we need plenty of people there. We need more and more people to help take content from traditional old PCs and move them over to smart devices. And so most of the data and a lot of the processing, raw processing power will still be done out in the cloud, but still some of that power can be distributed to the smart devices. And so that would mean that there would be more of a need for people to develop native code. Nonetheless, there's plenty out there. I have references to not only more reading material, but to the editors you can download, the developer program from Apple and from Android, If you need to get in touch with me, I can be reached at bxgirten@brainchildren.net. Again, bxgirten at brainchildren.net. Well, thank you very much for attending this webinar. I really enjoyed putting it together, and I'm hoping that you're able to take this and you're able to develop your app in the next 60 minutes yourself. Thank you, and again, drop me a line if you need to ask me any questions. I'd be more than happy to help out any way I can. Thank you.